conspiracy, killing on command, assassination, brainwashing, mind control, the Manchurian Candidate. That's the term you may or may not have heard. Tonight we're going to talk about the term. We're going to talk about the film. RickRamos, go.
This is a really interesting time in history, and it's a very I don't know. When I watch movies, there's different states of minds when it comes to watching movies. Sometimes you just want to be entertained. Sometimes you want to be you want to slip away into something that is different from you, and then there are times when you want to be challenged, when you want to ask questions, when you want to force the issue and ask yourself what's really going on. In 1962, John Frankenheimer, Frank Sinatra came together to make this film. I believe it was 1962. And for the majority of my life, I've heard about the Manchurian Candidate, and it's been a film that has just the name of the film has become a type of talking point for people who are barely familiar with the film, who have never seen the film, or those people that are, deeply paranoid and feel like it's almost a documentary. I watched this film for the first time last night, and I thought to myself, this is somewhat far-fetched in its in the realities of what it's depicting, or the instances that it's, the minutia of the film is difficult to reconcile with. The ideas behind the film definitely are not. The idea that the government is filled with puppets, the idea that there is a Cold War fear that, for me, I don't see this as a Cold War drama that I'm interested in hearing your take, because I'm really confused on this film, on what it's supposed to be. I think this is a film that could be used as a talking point in the Hoover administration during the House Un-American Activities, hearings. I don't see this film as a I don't see it as a slap in the face of paranoia. I look at this film, depending on your reading of something, as a thing that builds on the idea that communism is all around us. It's infiltrated every aspect of our lives and is moving towards making this country an extension of Russia and China. I was disturbed by this film. Not necessarily because of the story that it was telling, but because of the propaganda that I believe it is, as well as the times it depicts and the fragility of the public, as well as the government. So that's where I'm at. I'm interested in hearing you either talk me off the ledge or taking my hand and jumping with me, because I'm not sure what the fuck to make out of this.
It's an interesting. So it's based on a book. I haven't read the book. The book
59
was a few years before the film,
mm-hmm.
And the premise is like background to set up the story. Well, the story itself is you have a soldier with rank who is part of a political well-to-do family. He is leading a platoon in Korea during the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
His platoon is captured, and the idea is that while he's captured, he and fellow members of his platoon are brainwashed by communist scientists and he himself is turned into a political assassin. Basically a Soviet robot, and other members of his platoon, including Frank Sinatra's character, because Sinatra's in this.
Yeah.
They are programmed in order to promote him as this benevolent like hero, and the story is created around their capture, saying that he was this heroic leader who saved them. 2 of his men died in the fight. The reality is that Shaw, killed them as part of the experiment to show that he could be programmed to kill, and he was. So the whole film is around him coming back as a hero. Angela Lansbury is his evil, fucking ambitious, power-hungry bitch mother.
And she's great. She's great.
And she's fucking, yeah, she's the shit.
She's actually the best thing about this movie. And I think she's the reason that this movie, pardon me in interrupting you, but I got to get this out, is that the paranoia of the film, the American mentality of always having to have an enemy, and the brilliance of her performance is really what makes this a film that has lasted 60 plus years.
Well, it's crazy because so he comes back, and he is a hero who's supposed to promote his stepfather, who's Angela Lansbury's husband, who is basically her fucking cuckolded political servant, basically. And that stepfather, who's trying to rise in politics so that he can run the country, he is basically mirroring what was happening with McCarthy, with the House Un-American Activities, claiming people were communists. She's pumping him up full of information to spread these false rumors about communists in the United States. But the reality is, according to the story, is that she's actually working with real communists in China and in the Soviet Union to overtake the government from within. But because they chose her son, this is drama. She didn't know that they were going to choose her son. So she still goes through with it, but she's like, I'm going to go through with it, but once I gain power through my son, then I'm going to retaliate against them.
Yeah.
And that's the scene where she kisses her son straight full on the fucking mouth.
But it's also great, the line that she delivers, what they have done to you and how they have seriously underestimated me, or what did they say?
Something like
I mean, it was beautiful the way she does it. It's incredible, that moment.
So the background, so that's just it's convoluted, but it's more straightforward than that when you watch the film. If you watch the film, but just the background to that is like, why were they there in the first place? Is because you have to think of it as a proxy war after World War II, because the Korean whole peninsula had been controlled by Japan, imperialist Japan. And after World War II, it was divided into 2 occupied sections. The north was controlled by the Soviet Union, and the south was basically occupied by the U.S. But their own governments formed, and the north invaded the south. And so now you have the UN and U.S. forces backing the south, and China and the USSR, Soviet Union, backing the north. And so they're not directly going to war against each other, but they're doing it through each side of the Korean War.
Yeah,
it ends in a fucking stalemate. And, it goes into this it turns into what eventually would just be the Cold War, with other proxies, Vietnam as another proxy, etc. So the idea that got into the culture out of this book and out of this movie is that someone who is programmed to kill would be, it came to be referred to as a Manchurian Candidate. Manchurian Candidate because if you put the Manchuria is part of, it's the area where they were brainwashing these people in the film, and this is actually connected to real CIA shit. In after World War II, the CIA actually started studying Soviet brainwashing, and it was during the Korean War when there were concerns escalated around POW, prisoner of war, treatment, experiences, behaviors. So there was Project Bluebird was a CIA project that was the study of, there were all these projects that have come out that involve fucking UFOs and all this crazy shit. Mm-hmm. Bluebird was the study of drugs and hypnosis for mind control. There was another one that was called Project Artichoke. And the one that's the most well known is MK Ultra. And those covert studies, those covert operations were involving LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation. So you start to see more of that happening. At first, it's just focused on military prisoners, the enemy, but then there are questions now within like conspiracy circles, and the book kind of like feeds into that on some level. Is like it goes into the popular culture, and it's going right into the 60s.
Yeah.
There's two Errol Morris, probably the greatest documentarian in history.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree.
There are two pieces by Errol Morris that touch on this. I don't know if you're familiar with them. One is it's a series on Netflix called Wormwood.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
And it goes into, there was an army chemist named Frank Olson. He was secretly dosed with LSD, and he died in a fall. And that series covers that incident and the whole story around it. There's also an Errol Morris documentary on Netflix called Chaos, and it's based on a book by a researcher named Tom O'Neill, and that revolves around questions related to Charles Manson and his connection to MK Ultra, potentially.
Okay.
So what that does is it's now we've gone from the 50s with a film and a book about POW experiences in the Korean War into the 60s, where now the CIA is actually potentially bringing this shit not only into like the civilian world, but now potentially into the civilian world and into subculture, and it's gonna start to have these like crazy consequences, because obviously Charles Manson is fucking known for the fucking Manson murders. Not to mention in the late 60s, you have Sirhan assassinating RFK. Mm-hmm. There were questions about, was he mind controlled? Was he programmed?
If you're going to mention Sirhan, go with the, yeah. There's a legacy there.
Saying? So,
yeah.
There's that. There's fucking Peter Lavenda does research. Mm-hmm. He has all this crazy shit. His stuff is also, one of his pieces involves Manson as a broader CIA, MK Ultra, part of a culture that was interested in monitoring mind control and drugs in the late 60s. And even according to the theory, which the Chaos book and the Chaos film kind of like questions the Helter Skelter theory. We can get into that if we do an episode on that.
Yeah.
We've done one on Manson with the Tarantino movie. Manson was supposed to himself have brainwashed his followers with acid.
Yeah.
So it's a question of how was he able to do that? In the 70s, the Son of Sam, he was supposedly brainwashed by a satanic cult. That part of that, is it conspiracy? Was there an actual? Is it a conspiracy theory? Was there an actual conspiracy? This even leads into the 80s. Once you get into satanic panic, it's like ritual abuse, false memories, all this kind of crazy shit that's actually gotten into the culture beyond what it started with here. Deep Politics, Peter Dale Scott, the 60s countercultural intelligence as basically tolerating disorder in order to destabilize the counterculture and delegitimize dissent. So there's the idea that like were drugs disseminated amongst protesters to throw off as a COINTELPRO kind of shit, like to throw off the movement. It all starts with a story about an officer that everyone hates who ends up programmed to be an assassin working for the fucking Soviets. It all starts here. The movie itself is not that interesting.
I disagree, but okay. But I'm also
I'm also invested.
What's that?
I think the premise is interesting, but I don't think the film itself is that interesting. You yourself just said like,
yes,
Angela Lansbury is the best thing about
absolutely.
it. Like, yes,
I think that's true. I think there are elements to the film that I think at the time in which it was made, 62, and this film was pulled from distribution shortly after the Kennedy assassination, and some say it was Sinatra's feelings about towards Kennedy, but then there are others who say it was a financial disagreement between Sinatra and the studio. None of that really matters. Well, it does matter, but yes, I watched this film in the context of the time to which it's made, and I think it's important as a bridge from the family dramas of the 1950s, maybe even the dark Douglas Sirk films, of which Douglas Sirk is basically the original David Lynch in a weird way. Of, I don't know if you've ever seen any of his movies, but the beauty of American life, but the underlying depravity of it, the inability of people to the darkness. So Cirque is that, with All That Heaven Allows and Written on the Wind, movies like that. If you've ever, they're interesting. They're very good films. Anyway, this film is dated, and when we were starting to talk about this film, you wanted to talk about the Jonathan Demme remake, which I just saw the preview for it. And I'm really interested in that. It has a lot of elements that I'm really excited about. Demme as a director, I liked his work. I love Silence of the Lambs. Liev Schreiber is really dependable. Bruno Ganz is in it. Ted Levine, I love. But when it comes down to it, it's Meryl Streep and Denzel Washington. I don't know if they're going head to head. Of course. And I can't imagine anybody doing a better job, and I don't think I've never seen Meryl Streep in a violent and evil role, and I think if anybody can do it, it's her. You know my feelings about Denzel Washington, so I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see an update. The reason I wanted to talk about this movie is because historically it fits into something that is very much a game changer and a bridge from the happier films of the 1950s, even when there is something like underlying tension and the ugliness of the reality of the world, like I said in the Douglas Sirk films, versus the gradual distrust that society has. I think to just go into the remake would have skipped over something that I think is very valuable. You're right. As a film, I don't look at it like the masterpiece that a lot of people view it as, but I don't have the fortune to have seen it in 1962.
For sure.
You know what I mean? And so there's a part of me that really wants to imagine the cold water splash, the slap in the face of watching this film, and being face to face with the idea that maybe my government isn't as benevolent, caring, and loving as I've been taught, as I've been forced to believe. You know, right now, I watched this film last night, and for the past week, I've been reading James Ellroy's The Big Nowhere. And I'm on the fence with Ellroy. I think he's a fantastic writer, and I think we talked about this before. I don't know if he's a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, communist baiting. I don't know if that's his opinion or if he's just writing about the times. I don't know. I think he probably is to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, I think he likes we're going off on this tangent, but which is cool. But he,
we still got 40 minutes. We'll get there.
I think he likes the fucking aesthetic of being that guy. I think at what point does the aesthetic blend into reality? It's like there were certain people that in the 80s that were adjacent to the Church of Satan that were into fascism and they're into us to a certain degree. It was like aesthetic also, because it was like they would play with it. They would say, "Oh no," like, but then at another point they're taking pictures with actual fucking Nazis. And it's like, if you lie down with dogs, you're gonna get fleas. James, going back to Ellroy before we get back into this, is like, he romanticizes a certain period of time in the U.S. and therefore, I guess he feels like he has to fucking speak that way and say "daddy-o" and fucking And I like interviews with him because he is entertaining and shocking, and he's an asshole, and and he's funny, and he knows how to give good book readings and all of that stuff. And his writing, he hit a style that really works for him. That's really dense and fucking musical and jazzy and all that. But he probably is a fucking scumbag.
He
plays one on TV.
He's the literary James Woods. I mean, let's be honest about that. There's a certain charm there. You don't think so?
Let's give Ellroy more than that.
You think so? Huh? Okay, I'll give you that.
Yeah, James Ellroy's I think James Ellroy is a great writer. James Woods is a good actor. I think that's the difference.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm drawing parallels.
So fuck them both.
Fuck them both. But this is the thing. It's like it's this world that the paranoia was real. And let's be honest about something. It's that there was a communist threat. Now the problem becomes a government that uses a communist threat as a means of frightening its populace in order to gain more money and to fund whatever bills or programs that they're pushing. So there's a part of me that feels like governments are a threat no matter what, but those same governments are willing to weaponize and use said threats in order to further their goals. And when you do something like that, you're expanding on the danger. You're making it greater than it actually is in order to scare the shit out of people in that grab for power and money and legend, to be honest with you. So I like this film. What I like about this film is it it's smash in the face of late 50s sensibilities that would take us into the 60s and would pave the way for the flower power movement, the anti-war movement, the civil rights movement. You're watching, and he does a couple of things in it that are really interesting. I'm thinking, the much heralded set piece of the Soviet cross-cutting between the torture and the mind control experiment with the New Jersey Garden Club. I thought that was really interesting. I liked that. And then that weird scene with Janet Leigh, who, as I watch it now and I think back to it, I don't understand what her role in the film is, except
They're like,
to make
you gotta put in a love interest.
Yeah, but Frankenheimer is smarter than that, and he makes it subversive. Yeah, he puts in a love story there, but it's
Well,
couched in this weird conversation between the two. I laid down
on
track
the
with the
train?
Chinese here. You know, it's
Yeah,
Baltimore is a beautiful town.
yeah.
We're in Maryland. You know, or we're in I don't know where the fuck. It's a weird scene. It's a fucking weird scene. And that falling in
You're
love
right.
thing, it's because I was sitting there watching it going, is this going to pay off later as her being as her being a communist insurgent? Is she controlling Frank Sinatra in a different way
Right,
than Angela Lansbury? And they don't answer it. They don't,
right.
it's just left there. But I think it's intentional. I think it's put in there for that very reason, to throw you off and make you second guess the film. I think it's a weird kind of masterpiece for its time, but it's not a great movie as you watch it years later.
You're right. I mean, and I think it's interesting the way that people latch on to. So the metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
it's brainwashing as a metaphor, not necessarily. I mean, in the story, it's brainwashing as an actual literal thing.
Yeah.
But it's the idea of being controlled politically in a broader sense, because it's like, well, how many of these characters really are brainwashed? I mean, like Angela Lansbury's senator husband, to a degree, you could say he's brainwashed
Mm-hmm.
because he's controlled. He wasn't drugged and experimented on in some Soviet Manchurian, Chinese communist Manchurian fucking lab, but he's controlled. And it's like, are we talking literal brainwashing, or is that's just the story in order to give you the metaphor of propaganda and political control? Because, like, even when you say that there was a communist threat, I think it was sold to the American people
Mm-hmm.
as this ideological thing, and I think part of it is because the powers that be in this country didn't want this idea of worker. They didn't like fucking unions.
Yeah.
They didn't like worker solidarity.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't, and they never have. And they still don't. And the powers that be, what George Carlin called the owners, they don't want that. They don't want this idea of workers of the world unite. That's dangerous. And they don't want the idea of people having, because this goes hand in hand with civil rights, and like you said, it goes into like the anti-war movement, etc. So they framed it as it's like this. It's the ideological aspect of these ideas are fucking dangerous, and they're coming for you, and they're coming for your children, and it's the invasion of the body snatchers. And next thing you know, like your neighbor, you don't know it, but they're a communist inside. And still, you have this woke thing that, you know, currently it's all the same kind of panic. It's all the same kind of like, we need these American values. The communist threat that was more real, we're talking about geopolitical power. We're talking about countries that they themselves are using the ideology to control their people.
Well, I was going to bring that up too. It's like, when I start talking, because a lot of times we could start sounding like we're un-American and we're not patriotic. Well, the truth is, I'm not patriotic, but I'm not un-American.
Well, even the idea of being un-American is also a form of propaganda.
I was going to get into that as well. It was like, I believe, because I don't. To sound a little bit too idealistic, I think we're a species more than nations. We've gotten this idea that we are different from one another, and we have to fight this tribalistic battle that puts us against them. And as much as I hate the idea of that, I do recognize the validity of it in the context of the life that we live as it's been dictated to us. So there's a point where this evil shit that separates us has become the norm that dictates how we live our life. And wanting to be somebody that says it's bullshit and I don't like it doesn't change the fact that this son of a bitch might kill you. But in all fairness, we're trying to kill them as well. So it's like a constant back and forth of a populace being brainwashed into accepting the bullshit that they're told about their greatness and how wonderful they are. The worst thing that I could have ever done in my life was pick up those George Carlin albums, because they, at such a young age, it's the thing that drives you. It's the thing that opens your eyes to ideas. So when I watch something like this, I'm aware of the skill. I'm aware of the cinematic skills that are going into making this movie. I'm aware of the acting and the beauty of some of the performances and the way it's shot and the juxtapositioning of scenes. But at the same time, I'm sitting here thinking, this is just another way of telling me to be afraid of something that is not the threat that I imagine it to be, but it's a different threat. I mean, I gotta be honest. I'm probably more afraid of my government than I am of foreign governments, for the simple fact that this is what's closest to me. This is the shit that's going to affect me on it. This is the shit that's going to affect me on a day. They're talking. I'm in Arizona right now. They're talking about ICE coming into my state within the month. Now, you've lived in it. No, well, yeah, of course. But this is a red state. You're a blue state. It was obvious that they were going to come to your state and teach you a fucking lesson. We had the idea that we were going to be left alone. As simplistic and as entitled as that sounds, we didn't think we were going to get fucked with like that. But the wave is coming. And
it is.
It's something where I have to look at my mom and dad and I have to say, we're Americans, but stay in the house.
Yeah, and the house doesn't even protect you. The you know what I mean? It's like the fucking, once they start killing U.S. citizens, and it takes a white woman for people to get fucking freaked out, because it's kind of like what we talked about when we talked about Jaws. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's the horror, is when you see a blonde in the water getting killed, fuck, be afraid.
Yeah.
Because that's what is sacred in this country. Sacred to a degree.
Yeah.
And once those Antifa sharks are in the water, we got to protect society. I bring up Jaws just for that specific bullshit example, but it's the same thing.
Sure it is.
The powers that be being willing to lie to the people, and being willing to put certain people on the line and say, you take care of this. You need to fix this. You're the sheriff. You're this, you're that. Going back to the film, the fucking the idea that another government is brainwashing one of ours. Um, but the reality is that out of fear of that, our government started experimenting on ours. So it's like,
Yeah.
and that has tentacles that go into other areas. I mean, like, there's a movie called The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yeah.
That's from a book. John Ronson did work on that, and you had in the 70s and beyond, you had experiments and operations where they were using psychics. They were trying to. It's called remote viewing, where you would have like soldiers try to connect with psychic abilities, or spies try to connect with these psychic abilities, where they could remotely view enemy compounds, enemy locations. They tried to stare at animals and kill them by focusing on having them die. This is real shit that happened, and it sounds ridiculous, but this is the type of shit that fucking the government's been involved in.
Yeah.
On different levels, and even elements of that. I mean, that was like there's the First Earth Battalion. It was using New Age spirituality to tie in with espionage, as I said. But think of in Iraq, coming out of that, some of those, because that's Project Stargate.
Mm-hmm.
Coming out of those tactics, you see footage of during in Iraq. I think it was the second one, or it might have been the first one. They're playing like Metallica all night.
Yeah.
Outside of his compound.
Well, Earl Morris was talking about that during what was the film about Guantanamo Bay?
Exactly. I mean, there's that. Mm-hmm. There's that. There's also what happened at Abu Ghraib.
Yeah.
So these things have actual real world. Obviously, they're meant to have real world effect, but even as as ridiculous as some of them can be, the idea of New Age spirituality tied to warfare and dudes, martial artists, and these New Agey dudes sitting at a barrack somewhere trying to stare at a goat in order to have it die. That ends up fucking in the real world involved with torture. So the book, and then the film that we're talking about, it really tied into a cultural current that went beyond just paranoia. It really, I don't know if necessarily it influenced, but I mean it influenced in terms of the term, the name of Manchurian Candidate influenced the idea of calling someone who's a political assassin robot a Manchurian Candidate. Mm-hmm. But I mean, also think about the movie comes out in 1962, and then you have Kennedy.
1963.
And the idea that there are secret influences in the government, or was it just this lone assassin who had been radicalized as a Soviet, as a communist? And then the idea that no, he wasn't radicalized. It was forces, CIA and other forces in the U.S. government tied to the mafia, tied to anti-Castro Cubans, that were behind the assassination of JFK as part of a conspiracy, which was basically a coup. And that kind of debate has been ongoing since right after this movie came out. The film JFK is all about it.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Yeah, numerous times we've talked about that. It's a difficult film because the subject matter is difficult. It's nobody wants to believe that this kind of shit is out there. We want to go to our jobs. We want to be able to, come home, play with our kids, eat our dinner, and, watch some fucking television. But the reality is that there are elements in the government that are struggling for that power. I mean, we're looking at shit right now. See, the thing about the film is that it's in a weird way, it's like a monster movie. It's almost like a Dr. Caligari. It's like a Dr. Mabusa, where mind control is used to dictate government actions and assassinations and this kind of thing. Yeah, Renfield. It's like mind control, and I think that's in a weird way that's metaphor, but it makes it kind of dismissive. I mean, there are people out there that believe that brainwashing is real and that you can control people in this way. I think that's ridiculous. But I think there is a conditioning in American life, Soviet life, communist China, Vietnam, whatever, where if you're raised to sing patriotic songs, pledge allegiance to the flag, look upon your forefathers as these great intellects, and dismiss their notably fucking evil behavior, that is a form of radicalization in and of itself. But 100%. It's not something. Yeah, but it's not something that we want to address.
Scrolling on your phone, it's fucking conditioning.
Absolutely.
All that fucking, it's all conditioning. The fucking, the fucking porn and all the fucking ads, the ads on every fucking site, and then you have ad blockers for YouTube, so you don't have to fucking look at it, but then YouTube has blockers to block the ad blockers. Yeah. So you can buy premium, and the ads you see are coming up when you talk about whatever it is on your phone, but then it's like, well, your phone's not listening to you, but is it or is it not? I mean, this film gets into the current of conspiracy. I mean, culture itself is conditioning.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have to be political. I mean, obviously it can be religious, it can be anything. Me coming from having studied religion, as that being part of my background, I'm not a proponent of religion. I think we've always kind of butted heads on that. I'm saying that because you've come from the place of religion, it came out religion is created to control people. And
I don't know if it's so much created to control people, but it was born. I might have believed that at one time. I think it's more along the lines of I think you've pulled me into the arena of believing that it is a natural evolution of culture and species. However, that doesn't mean, and I think
but it is used.
It is abused. It is abused in order to control people, and I would rather be dismissive of religion totally, because I don't. When you weigh the good versus the bad in religion, I think everything that you can do. I think all of the good that is inherent in the species is possible without the belief in a God. So
sure,
that puts me at odds with a lot of people.
Without belief in a God, also.
Yes.
The point is that any element of culture can be used to control the people, and it has, and it will. How we dress, how we speak, what we eat, things that identify us
Mm-hmm.
as us versus them. This is how we do this. They're not like us. They do things this way. They are beneath us. We're
Mm-hmm.
better than them.
Yeah.
They're cannibals. They're savages. They're whatever. They eat dogs. They're rapists. Some of them, I assume, are good people. Blah 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 blah. It's always a fucking us versus them. And the reality is, to the people who are telling us these things about them, we're also part of the them to them, because it's like the owners and the leaders don't give a fuck about us. And it is a communist Renfield, but it could be a fucking Catholic Renfield, or it could be uh, um, a patriotic Renfield. It doesn't have to be everybody on some level, unless you're fucking really skeptical and really critical.
Yeah.
You're being influenced day in and fucking day out. When objects and items on a shelf at eye level are put there on purpose
Mm-hmm.
to capture your attention.
Yeah.
When primary colors are used to fucking draw your attention, and that's how the fucking McDonald's is, and the fucking different hamburger places, they use color. This is advertising. This is marketing. This is Edward Bernays. This is fucking all of that shit. Like, we are conditioned.
Mm-hmm.
We're
That's
conditioned by our fucking parents. We're conditioned by our own fucking experiences. We go to school, the bell rings, and now we know we just fucking get up and go on to the next thing, because that was how people were basically conditioned to grow up to go to factory jobs. Because the bell rings, and then you go on to the next thing. This is what it is. We are, to a certain degree, what the conspiracy theorists refer to as sheeple. But the conspiracy gurus are like, well, but I'm the one who's going to give you the truth about how it really is. It's really the lizard people that are in control. And then this other guy's like, you're full of shit, because now you're actually part of the government, and you're a psyop. It's not the lizard people, because that doesn't exist. It's actually the globalist agenda, and blah 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 blah, whatever it is, right?
yeah.
So the film is powerful in terms of the kind of spark that it ignites and what it ties into as a subject matter. It'll be interesting when we talk about the remake, which is way more, I think, Hollywood. It's way more. It has. I see some Ridley Scott and potentially Tony Scott, aside from even the fact that Denzel's in it, like influences. It's much more, I think, upbeat and modern. And it's one of the times that I think the updating the material and the remake is, I think, valid. A lot of times, I don't think remakes need to be made outside of just money schemes.
It's a rarity. It really, I can count on one
rarity.
hand how many remakes are worth having been done.
Right. I mean, but the Thing, we would have never gotten Carpenter's Thing without a remake.
And I'm willing to put up with as much bullshit as possible in order to get a Thing. That's how great that film is. I mean,
this is not the Thing. I mean, that itself is also like an updated version. I mean, we talked about the AIDS element, but like I said, it's another version of fucking Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where it's like you don't know who you can trust.
Well, it comes down to the paranoia of it. Now, when you look at the James Gregory vice presidential candidate, the senator making his way towards vice presidential candidacy, it's hard to watch that film in 2026 and not think of Donald Trump. And and it's easy to just correlate that, but there's a film called Citizen Cone. and it's about the fixer, lawyer, legal scumbag, lowlife motherfucker Roy Cohn, who was active in the late 70s, but really saw his power grow in the 80s, who was a groomer of Donald Trump. And it's hard to watch this movie and not see Angela Lansbury in that role. So it's I think the telling thing about this film is to understand that whoever the public figure is, that's only maybe a quarter of the story. The face that is being presented to you isn't really making the decisions. As much as I would like to put a lot of this shit on Donald Trump, go watch American Dharma. Was it American Dharma? The
Yeah.
American Dharma. We talked about in an earlier episode. Go into Libsyn and punch in Earl Morris, and you will see the many episodes that we've done on him. Earl Morris did a film about Steve Bannon. The real power in government is Steve Bannon, Steve Miller, and a number of other people that we haven't heard of. That's the thing that we should be afraid of. Those are the lies, and we really need to be looking in the shadows to find out what the fuck it is that is controlling our world, and look to see where the money is going. Follow the money. Always follow the money.
Go 100%. And remember that Roy Cohn was fucking connected to J. Edgar Hoover. You mentioned J. Edgar Hoover earlier.
Yeah.
The FBI head who fucking spied on everybody and had fucking massive control. He was also tied to Joseph McCarthy. He was his lawyer.
Yeah.
Joseph McCarthy of the Red Scare, accusing everybody of being a fucking communist. This is the guy who taught Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Like, that's power. That's fucking influence. That's understanding the game.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing that I find powerful about this film, regardless of cinematically how good a film it is. I mean, it's I've said it. It's not a film that is aged well as far as technique. But at the time, what it represented was incredibly powerful. That you can't dilute that. And if you watch it as a time capsule of the time, you got to remember this is also us coming out of the Hays Code, and filmmakers, writers, directors, actors figuring out what they could and what they couldn't do. I mean, it would be another 5 or 6 years before Bonnie and Clyde, and then The Wild Bunch, and then the explosion of the 1970s with The Godfather, The Conversation, Taxi Driver, all of these films that would really go out of their way to show a compromised government. But The Manchurian Candidate is the 1962 film is a key to that lock. It's chipping away and making it possible for the films that would come after it, and the freedom in storytelling that you would find in the later movies. Now, that being said, look at the films that are being made today. I think we've gone back to a compromised cinema. You're not seeing films being made today that challenge in that way. We had a period in the 70s. We had a period in the 90s. We don't have that today. Of course not, but why? Because it's dangerous.
Yeah, and because it's bullshit and it's bad for you.
That's right. I'm really excited about next week. I'm really excited. Like I said, I didn't want to not go over this film. I wanted to watch it in the context of the time, and I imagine that next week's conversation is going to be some of the same, but very different, because I think the world has changed significantly, but it follows a through line. The powers that be continue to be the powers, and there is still that desire to control the populace. And if we can just be a couple of asshole voices out there screaming into the wind, maybe a few people will pay attention. But I think it's important to watch films like this, Elia Kazan's A Face in the Crowd, Taxi Driver. There are any number of films that really take a look at the paranoia and the fear, the justifiable paranoia and fear that exists in this country. And I think you do yourself a service by watching this movie. And I'm excited about the updated version from what was it, 2004?
Yeah.
I'm excited.
If you like what we do, you want to contribute, you want to let us know you give a fuck, go to buymeacoffee.com/watchRickRamos. That's buymeacoffee.com/watchRickRamos. $5 is all it takes. You want to be a member. This episode goes to someone who is a new member, wanted to donate anonymously. I know who you are. I saw the email. I saw the email address. We're monitoring you. We're watching you. We're getting in your fucking head. And we thank you.